Hello friend, welcome to Philosol. My name is Ollie and I would love to share with you a very interesting perspective that I realized a while back. It's about negative self-image and how that relates to human equality. And this was actually one of the most important lessons that I had to learn in my life to get my own life on track. I always strive to give very important and valuable insight with Philosol, but this one might take the cake so far for the lesson that has impacted my life the most. So I thought of a very interesting term a while back, and after an admittedly very brief internet search, I didn't find anybody else using it. I used to be a huge self-bigot. I was very prejudiced against one specific demographic, and that demographic was myself. So I am not bigoted. I believe we're all created equal regardless of where we're born, the wealth of the family we're born into, our gender, our beliefs, whatever. I believe we're all equally worthy of respect and love, and I believe it's very important for us all to treat each other as equals. So that's not really the point of this video, but I am going somewhere with this. You see, even though these are all very important convictions that I hold very deeply, they guide my actions, they guide my beliefs, I actually wasn't totally consistent with them. You see, there was one person who I did treat as lesser. I was very bigoted toward this person. I treated them like they weren't as important or valuable or worthy of love. All sorts of really nasty, horrible things. I honestly believed this person was lesser, and I even told this stuff to this person all the time. Of course, this person was myself. I had a huge lack of self-confidence, self-worth, and self-love. And by self-love, I don't mean, arrogance or pride, because that wouldn't be equal either, of course. I mean simply extending the same love and respect that I intend to treat everybody with to myself. Because why wouldn't I? I'm an equal human being, right? I can't claim to see all humans as equal and then leave any one person out. That would be hypocritical, inconsistent with my beliefs, and that is no way to live. So I had no self-love, no self-worth, no self-confidence. I was extremely self-conscious, and I would place my self-worth, what I thought of myself, in the hands of others. Of course, this doesn't work. You can't actually get self-worth from someone else. And I actually believe that humans are meant to operate with self-worth and self-love, and I will be talking about that in this video a little bit more. I was going to go a lot more in depth into why exactly I believe that. That ended up being a huge topic on its own, so maybe that'll be another video. Anyway, let me at least share with you an example of a time where I was very self-conscious and I placed my self-worth, my validation, in the hands of other people and how that affected me. So I strive to live by morals, right? Very strong principles that are important to me, to my life. I'm not willing to break them. And this is great. I believe everybody should do that and always be checking your morals and live by them the best way you can. Yet I had a lack of self-worth, and I was looking for validation in others. And when you are trying to maintain your morals and seek validation from other people who don't necessarily share those same convictions, it really bites. So one time I was invited to hang out with a group of friends, and this was awesome. And I only knew one person, the person who invited me, and I was nervous and shy and, kind of anxious about it because this was very new for me. I didn't know anybody else there, but at the same time, I was super excited. I mean, really excited. It's hard to explain just how excited I was. And part of this was because I got along so well with this friend. I really enjoyed this friend's company, and I was really excited to do something outside of work. But part of it was because I was placing my self-worth, my validation, in others. And so being invited, as ridiculous as this is, being invited was validation that I was craving, right? So before the date arrived, I received a text in regards to the event, and I was asked if I was okay with marijuana. And of course the answer is no. I'm very uncomfortable with that sort of thing, losing sobriety and smoking in any way. I hate that stuff. I'm very uncomfortable with it. And frankly, it smells awful. So my dilemma, I want the validation of these good people because I didn't have it in myself, which I should have. And I want to be someone who's fun to be around, and there's nothing wrong with that. but I have my limits. I have my guidelines that I want to live with, and I was extremely uncomfortable with this situation. I mean, my anxiety was through the roof. I was so stressed out, I felt awful, I completely lost my peace, and of course your power is in your peace. I felt like I either had to lose this validation that I was craving, or I had to be in this extremely uncomfortable situation, and both of those options sounded like agony. So, fortunately, because we were texting, I had a few minutes. So I eventually replied, "I'll manage," with a little smiley face, and because that was the best I could do, because I'm not the type of guy to tell you how to spend your time, right? I'm being invited by you. I'm not going to tell you what not to do. The funny thing is, the reply was, "Hey, that's totally fine. If you're not comfortable, we won't do it. It's totally cool." It was not an issue. It really was not an issue. And they made it clear it was not an issue. It was not a big deal. And I was very grateful for that. But, I still felt so bad about it. I didn't want to be the guy that told them no. And of course, you should never, just tell people how to live. But I took this to a really unhealthy level. I, I showed up and I got no flack about it. Everybody was nice. But I should have been validated. I was still anxious when I was there. I should have been validated within myself, right? I should have had my own self-worth with the decisions I made for myself that I can justify to myself instead of relying on others, right? Because even if it's awkward, even if it didn't work out, even if I got flack about it, right? That's their decision, and I made my decision. And I'm not trying to cause problems, but I need to make my decisions for myself, right? And they were kind enough to ask, and so I'm allowed to make my decision. Even if they didn't ask, I'm allowed to make my decision on what I'm comfortable with, and I need to have that validation for myself, right? So the fear was ultimately in my own mind. It stemmed from myself. I made it bigger than it was, and that's why it's really important for us all to have our own self-worth. But there may be times where it doesn't end with everybody being happy. There may be times where you have to stand up for what's right, stand up for your morals, especially if it's a situation where maybe somebody's treating somebody else unfairly. And quick side note about morals, of course it's great to have strong morals to live by them. Please do that. But do be educated about your morals. You should always be checking your morals and make sure that they are sound principles and not simply something that you've been influenced to believe at some point, or it's ultimately based in a form of selfishness. And I'm only saying this because I had to do the same thing. The beliefs that I have now are not all the same as they were however many years ago. Anyway, so in many situations, there will still be many people who will respect your stance, your moral stance, even if they don't completely agree with it or live by it. There are still a lot of people who will at least respect it. They will do at least that. But there may be some situations where the people are less shiny and happy, and if you care about what those people think, you're not going to have a good time. Let me share with you another personal example. I used to volunteer at a private food line. Stores would donate food, and we would collect it up and pass it out for free to those in need. And occasionally there would be people who try to steal food. And I was very oftentimes the guy who called them out on it, told them to put it back, and beat it. And I'm at a point where I'm able to confront these people head on and be very bold and not care at all about what they think when I do that, right? I don't need their validation, because let me tell you, you're stealing free food. Like, if I care about what you think, then I'm in trouble, okay? So, anyway, if you place your self-worth in the hands of others, you can never and will never be fulfilled. That's how it works. Because self-worth comes from the self. And if you honestly believe inside, if you don't have that, if you're missing that, if you believe yourself to be worthless, then no matter how much love and support and praise and respect and help you get from other people, if you still believe yourself to be worthless, you're going to still keep believing that. Now, love and support from others can maybe help you change that belief, but you still have to be proactive about it. It is still your belief, right? That's why, and I learned, I have to love and accept myself. If I'm supposed to love everybody, I'm supposed to love myself too. It's only right. It only makes sense. I'm an equal human being, right? And so when I do love myself, I'm not craving that validation from other people to fill this hole, because there is no hole. So a wonderful piece of advice that I got from my mom, I love you, Mom, that really helped me. This was kind of a really big breakthrough for me. It really helped me put this in perspective. Imagine taking the negative self-talk that you say to yourself and say it to somebody else who's going through similar struggles. Imagine saying it to your coworker, your spouse, your friend. Things like, you're not as worthy of love or something. Obviously, that is like horrible. It's abusive. You'd be way beyond a jerk. Okay? I wouldn't dream of saying that to anybody else, so why would I say it to myself if I'm an equal human being? So, we abuse ourselves. We treat ourselves way differently. It's not healthy. It's not loving. It's not respectful. It's certainly not equal. So I'm going to hope and assume that you watching this, you're not racist or anything, that you believe in the equality of all humans, because it's very true and it's very important. But, so I had to realize for myself, if I believe in the equality of all humans, what does that mean? We all have the same rights. We're all worthy of love equally. We're all capable of great things, even if we have faults, which we all do. So I look at myself. Am I exempt? Am I a special case? Why would I be? I'm not. So I had to tell myself, and I'm telling you, you are a precious human soul. You are capable of great things. You are no less deserving of love. Okay? You have the same worth and the same rights as everyone else. We all do, because we're equal human beings. So please don't mistreat yourself. Don't be a hypocrite. Don't be a self-bigot. You deserve more than that, just by virtue of being a human, because we all are human. And even if you feel lesser, because maybe you feel guilty, which is a big cause of this, remember, the moment you feel guilty, that is evidence that you are a good person, because that means you want to change. Okay, so you messed up, we all mess up, we're all human, but guilt means you want to change. So don't allow your guilt to beat yourself down and convince you that you're less worthy. All it means is that you are a good person. So please hold on to that, okay? It's very important, and I go into that much more in depth in my Guilt is Like Coffee video. So the moment you feel guilty, that's the moment that your heart has a desire to do better, and that's a beautiful thing. So please don't let your unhealthy feelings hold you back. It doesn't make sense. Please, and I had to learn this. Allow yourself to feel love. It only makes sense, and it only helps. So the Bible actually talks about this too. In Mark 12:28-31, it talks about the most important commandments. And I want to bring this up because throughout my whole life I've seen a lot of people misunderstand this. I think this is actually one of the most misunderstood verses in the Bible. It says to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that's a very good message. It's very true. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And I see a lot of Christians take this to mean love your neighbor immensely. And that's great, and that's true, but that's half of what it says. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. No less, no more. Right? It's very, very simple. And here's the thing. For example, it's very good to sacrifice something of yours. It's very noble to sacrifice your time, your money, whatever, to help somebody else out. That's loving. That's a good thing to do. But that doesn't mean you value them more, right? It means you're willing to do what you can to help them. That's love. I mean, what, are you going to give up somebody else's things? That's not loving for that guy. That's not equal. You have a right to give up your stuff, not that guy's stuff. So, unfortunately, I see this misinterpreted as love others more than yourself, and that's not what it says. And unfortunately, this causes a lot of people, a lot of Christians in particular, in this case, to see themselves as lesser, right? And I've seen this in my family a lot, and I used to be this way most of my life. And then, of course, ironically, this leads to Christians oftentimes acting more prideful and arrogant, because then they have to act big to feel more worth than they actually do feel on the inside. And of course, this is not something that's exclusive to Christians. I used to know an atheist who did the same thing. I just wanted to bring this up because personally I've seen it a lot in my life, and I wanted to bring it up for those who care to know. So to sum up, self-love is simply extending that equality to yourself, right? Realizing that you're made to be great just like everybody else. There's nothing wrong with that. It's very healthy and very true. And in fact, if you don't have that self-love, the ramifications are really bad. And it can lead to an incredibly unhealthy mind. And just like how love for others is really important, love for yourself is hugely important too. And why wouldn't it be? You're a human, right? We're all humans. So without it, we begin to behave in ways that seek to fill that lack, but there is no real replacement for love. And so we often end up treating either ourselves or other people worse. And while I definitely have been guilty of treating other people worse, I would very often treat myself very, very badly. And of course, this, I would seek validation from others. I was depressed. My self-talk was horrible, and this would be very discouraging, of course, and this affected my productivity, my health, my fitness, everything. And so it was my mom's advice in particular that really helped me put it in perspective, just how much of a self-bigot I was, how inconsistent my beliefs were. So I really hope that me sharing this has helped you understand something. You learned something good from this. Please feel free to share it with anybody and everybody. I want to help as many people as I can. And if you have any questions or if you want to share your experiences, your perspective in the comments, please feel free to do so. I'd love to hear it. We're all growing together. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for listening. Much love.